Hello, all. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of A Queen's Roundtable Show and Podcast. Let me say this I am your host, Dr. Jacqueline Harrison. If you have not subscribed as of yet to A Queen's Roundtable channel on YouTube, then please do so. That way, you can become a part of the family as well as you will be up to date on just before we go live and all of the upcoming shows that we have, just to make sure you don't miss out. And definitely tell a friend. A Queen's Roundtable show and podcast is dedicated to personal, professional, and leadership development for women in business. So the topics vary. Also, if you are interested in being a guest on the show, whether you want to spotlight your brand, your business, you have a new a new book coming out, you have a new project, a new product, whatever the case is, let's definitely connect. I would love to have you as a guest on the show. So let's segue into today's Queen's Spotlight is Gricelda Ramsey. So we're going to be talking in the area of mental health. So, tune in, grab a pen and a pad, and I'm going to bring her into the studio in just a moment. Initially, I'm going to let you know a little bit more about Miss Ramsey. All right, so I am a therapist, life spiritual coach, consultant, the solutions therapist, real problems, real solutions, helping you tap into the power within to begin your life destiny. Get in touch with your purpose, keep in touch with the purpose, and stay in touch with your destiny. Miss Gricelda Ramsey is a woman of passion and compassion for the well being of others. She offers over 20 years of experience in counseling, coaching, and consulting. She is a licensed master social worker. She has a passion for restoring broken families and mending relationships and helping people find solutions to their circumstances through clinical and spiritual practices, incorporating life experiences, observations, and knowledge with practical life lessons. Griselda assists her clients by treating the whole person from a person centered approach, seeing the client as a partner in their healing. She promotes healing of the mind, body, and spirit through healthy lifestyle practices. One of Griselda's missions is helping the faith community to understand mental illness, to understand mental health in our community and remove the stigma of seeking therapy, breaking through barriers and strongholds that attack and destroy individuals, marriages, and families in our community, and helping women to heal from trauma and brokenness and walk in their purpose. She is also establishing a new passion in working with men in therapy to help them identify emotional barriers established by environment and societal trauma and painful experiences and create a healing path to authenticity and healthy relationship within family and their community. In June of 2020, she officially did a full launch and became the CEO of Life Changing Therapeutic Services, LLC, which is a private practice offering therapy, counseling, consulting, training, speaking engagements, and workshops. She received her Master of Social Work degree as a graduate, Master of Social Work degree and a graduate certification in social work practice with couples and families in 2003 from Wayne State University. She also earned a Master of Arts in Education, Adult Education, and Training in 2012 from the University of Phoenix. She will be pursuing or is pursuing a doctorate degree in organizational leadership in behavioral health at Grand Canyon University. Lastly, she is the wife of Pastor Nicholas D. Ramsey of the Church of the Living God. Living God CWFF Temple 279 in Detroit, Michigan. She is blessed to be the mother of two adult children and one granddaughter and one grandson. Gricelda has served in ministry for 10 years, and in July of 2019, she was ordained as an evangelist with the Church of Living God, CWFF. And one of her favorite scriptures is from Isaiah 43 2 NLT. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. And she is professionally known as the solutions therapist, and she is also a published author. So without further ado, we're going to bring her into the virtual studio. Well, hello there, Miss Gricelda. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dr. Jackie?
I am great. I'm actually looking at a note here on my computer that my computer wants to shut down and install updates. And I'm like, okay. But it doesn't give me an option to select a later time. So hopefully we'll be okay.
All
But thank
righty.
you all. So we'll see. Thank you all for joining us again for the A Queens Roundtable show and podcast. Make sure we're here every Sunday at 3 p.m. Make sure you subscribe if you have not already to the A Queens Roundtable channel on YouTube. Okay, so you can stay up to date with everything. So, Miss Gricelda, welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, I know I read your bio, but kind of, fill some of it in. Let us know a little bit more, I guess, in reference to like how did you get on this mission? How did you realize or come to know that this was your purpose?
I think when I was in elementary school, I started out wanting to be a doctor, a medical doctor, a pediatrician, or OBGYN. And
Mhm.
along the pathway of life, I veered toward therapy and counseling. I always knew I wanted to help people, and just the capacity of which I did that change. So back in elementary school, I knew that I was destined to help people figure some things out.
Mhm.
Seeing trauma and going through trauma, or having trauma in my family, really kind of like prepared me for this spot right now. I'm very passionate about doing therapy. It's not a job for me. It's a passion for me. And so people say, how do you see so many people in 1 week, or how do you work such long hours? Because it doesn't feel like a job to me. And when I do need to take a vacation, I do take a vacation, or I take some self-care time to myself. So
Okay. So one of the things that I've heard often about social workers, and it rings true for me, there's usually, or very often, I'll say, a component to it that like a specific reason as to why we went into social work or why
mhm.
we want to help other people. Is there any like any did you have any particular experiences maybe in the past where you felt that you needed someone but maybe they weren't there, or you kind of saw that that there was a gap that needed to be bridged, or any something along those lines?
Not really. I thankfully I had a very supportive family. Even though I'm the child of a divorce, my mother and father were there for the most part, and my grandparents were there for the most part. And like I said, I have a supportive village even then and now. And then when I was 16 years old and went to my church, they embraced me right away. So I've always had a village behind me. I think because I started out as pre med, I remember talking to a psychiatrist. It was at the time that HMOs were created, at that time when
Mm.
they became a law, and he was saying to me that things were shifting, and the way that we practice medicine and the way the psychiatrists practice medicine was changing. And
Mhm.
he encouraged me to go into the field of social work, as opposed to things are just going to change. The way we do things as medical doctors are going to change. That could have been a good or bad thing, but it worked for me. And at that time, I started looking into, what that entailed. How would I help people? People have always gravitated toward me to get advice or to tell me things or lean on things. People always say that I had an old soul, and so at a very young age, I love being around older people at a very young age. So seeking the knowledge and the wisdom that they have. So I think I was just kind of destined toward that at a very young age.
Okay. All right. I was going to ask you something else, and it just slipped me just that quick. So now your practice, when you started your practice, and what year was it? I know it was before the no, was it before the pandemic or right after?
In some capacity, I started in 2010 in some
Okay.
capacity because I used to
Okay.
do contractual work with foster care children or children in, who's referred to CPS. I did, and I also did contractual therapy under my brand, business name. But full time launch into private practice happened June 2020 when the pandemic started. And, for years I've been wanting to go into full private practice and had been putting it off. And so at that time, I was like, with telehealth, you really have no excuse not to get started. Either you start now or don't even talk about it anymore. So in June of 2020 is when I got started at full time. And then
Okay.
in 2021, I was in a great resignation that they talked about, and I left my job in 2021 June, 1 year later. So
Wow. Okay. So
yeah.
1 year later, okay, you was able to pack that little box up and walk out that door and haven't turned back since, right?
Absolutely, and not looking forward, if I can help it, to ever going back.
Right. I love it. So talk to us a little bit about mental health awareness and how you feel. I know we touched a little bit on it in terms of in your bio. And as far as like mental health and the stigma within the African American community. And I know you've, started working, I guess, more particularly too with men as well. So kind of, tie into that a little bit. Let us know a little bit more about that.
Yes, I think thankfully, I started noticing a shift when like Robin Williams committed suicide, and you started seeing more and more celebrities talk about mental health. Taraji P Henson and other people have really started to be crusaders for the mental health world, and now it's like almost a household name, not quite, but almost a household name. Taking care of yourself mentally. I always say it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to not get help when you're not okay. So, for us, it, me being my background and being in the faith community, we've always been geared toward let's pray about it, or you don't talk about those kind of things outside the house, or talk to God about it. But it's okay to love Jesus and to love a therapist also, or to seek therapy also. So my goal is to just really restoring and really breaking down the barriers that people have in seeking help and trying to advertise or bring awareness to the fact that therapy is available in our community through Medicaid. We can get help, or if we can't afford to pay. And some people think I can't afford a therapist, but they have made it vitally, accessible to everybody. Even telehealth was one of the best things, because when you talk about men seeking therapy, you got men who probably would never walk into a therapist's office because, in their mind, we don't do that. I'm crazy. I'm weak. I'm this, I'm that. But it's okay for me to talk to you virtually because nobody has to know, while I'm, and at the same time I'm getting the help that I need. And I'm learning how to put emotions and words together and break down barriers of trauma. Men have so much trauma that's never talked about hardly, that they don't get to share, they don't get to work through. So it comes out, I always say for men, they have three responses. And one of those responses is I withdraw and I isolate, or I get defensive because I feel attacked. And the other one is anger, and anger covers all the other stuff. I'm hurt. I'm low self esteem. I got trauma in my life. I'm in pain, and anger covers all of that because men are taught don't cry. Don't show your emotions. Don't cry. You just bury it. You just do what you got to do. And so years of that behavior systematically, and individually comes out. It's got to come out somewhere. So it comes out in those three ways is what I've noticed so much more for men who happen to be in touch with their emotions and can express them. I hands down, I give them, all the kudos, but most men cannot, and most
Right.
women cannot. So, I love to do what I do and help people really attach words and feelings and emotions together.
You know what? It's interesting that you mentioned too that even a lot of women that you run into have difficulty with their, expressing their emotions. And that's interesting because, typically women are, typically more likely to talk about how we feel,
Right.
So
Right.
it's interesting to hear you say that. So, and I feel like I have more questions about the men too, but it's like now I want to ask you about that. So how do you, so you actually, so you find that when women come in to see you, that it's that what do they feel ashamed and they don't want to share, or is it that maybe their feelings are pushed down so deep, that they're so used to kind of overlooking it or pushing past it? I mean, what do you think? What do you think is the reason that a lot of women have, difficulty expressing themselves or sharing their emotions?
I think for women, two things happen. One is that in our community, especially, but women,
Mhm.
I think in general, we're taught to be strong. We're taught to, especially Black women, we're taught to be strong. We're taught to bear what we got to bear, take care of this, take care of everybody but ourselves. And so we find that we are the last on the list of people that we take care of. And so we learn how to survive, but we don't learn how to heal. And so it manifests itself in a lot of times for women in a lot of broken relationships with men or with other people. We have all these broken these relationships, or we're seeking love in all the wrong places because we have not learned how to heal from traumatic experiences, or people talking crazy to us or talking down to us or talking, we learn to think that's normal. And so it's not normal. And a lot of times women tend to act out, sexually or otherwise, or even putting themselves on display sometimes because I want attention. I want people to look at me. And, I always say the best form of sex appeal for a woman is, you give them a little bit, but not too much, and let their imagination
Like a
fill in the
sneak
blank. Yes, you give them a sneak peek and let their imagination fill in the blank.
filling
And
in the
but
blanks.
for us, we're so, and I'm not knocking anybody that does plastic surgery. Do what you do. But I do see that more and more women are so on display because we've been sexualized in a lot of ways. In videos and rap videos and just period. Back in the day, they wouldn't dare show you a woman's silhouette or a tampon or anything on TV, but now it's second nature. So we're sexualized in a lot of ways, and women act out in a lot of ways to get attention, and we don't, and a lot of times we jump out of one relationship into another relationship without the healing process happening, and so we don't really understand who we are, what we need at the time. So that's why I say some women find it very difficult. Even though we are expressive people, that doesn't mean we're expressing ourselves in the right way.
Right. Right. You said a lot, Griselda. So let me just
Walk it back.
let me take a moment to pause. And I'm pretty sure that other people, as they listening to us, whether it's live or catching the replay, they probably like, dang, I'm gonna have to listen to that part again because you say quite a bit. So I want to make sure, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I definitely want to just kind of talk a little bit more in depth about how this whole idea of the strong Black woman.
Okay.
Now, I'm a therapist as well, and I guess what I find, and I totally agree with everything that you said.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
it's like I see women come in, and it's more likely that they come in for therapy,
mhm.
versus the men. Like what I find with the men is they may come in like they have a particular crisis going on.
Absolutely.
Something
Absolutely.
that's just they just can't, it's really, really like maybe a lot of different things compounding on one another. Let's just say
Mhm.
they'll come
Absolutely.
in And there's a lot of kind of shame around it, if you will, for lack of better words. And they'll
Mhm.
usually come for a few sessions, but they don't continue. That's what I've experienced. Now, as far as women, I think women come in at a higher rate. And again, oftentimes it's as if they're coming there, and they're admitting that things have gotten a little too out of control, maybe kind of like a pressure cooker, right? Maybe they keep putting that, trying to push that top down, but they can't anymore,
Absolutely.
right? But then I also noticed that there's like a point in therapy there, that how they kind of retract a little bit,
Hmm.
meaning they begin to say, kind of rationalize their behavior, I guess. Or,
Absolutely.
either they're rationalizing, or they're like, okay, well, it wasn't that bad, or, I kind of, I got over that. But it's like, for me, I look at that, and I think that that kind of plays into the whole strong Black woman. Because I know that I've been taught, and that I've watched, my mother, my aunts, grandmothers, things of that nature, and friends, mothers, and so forth. Just that, it's this attitude of, we don't have time to be sick, or we don't have time to have an off day, so to
Abs-
speak. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like, get up, put your makeup on, fix your wig or whatever, get your nice outfit on, and and just carry on. So I agree that that's so ingrained in us, and I don't know why it's or it makes it challenging for us just to kind of wave a little flag, or just to,
Absolutely.
or like how you mentioned earlier, to say, you know what, I'm really not okay, you know and then, I promise I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna give the mic over to you. And
Oh,
then
that's
I think too, because like Black women are some of the most educated women, right, in this country. I'm just talking about within the United States. And I think, you know a lot of women, they get different degrees, they have their own house, they have these awesome careers, they're able to take vacations and things of that nature. And I think that oftentimes, when you start to peel that onion, right, you really,
100%.
yep, you start to get at the core, you find out that there's a lot of insecurities, or a lot of,
100%.
right, they don't even know who they are, like how you mentioned earlier, and how you touched base on earlier about like the plastic surgery, and let's say weight loss, and I don't know, just whatever, getting the eyebrows tattooed on, the lashes out there, whatever the case, right? I'm sorry, that's just too much for me. But it's the constant doing all of these external things to
Absolutely.
feel
Absolutely.
better about yourself, or to somehow validate yourself. So I think
Absolutely.
all of that kind of, you know uh comes together. Okay, so I'm handing you
Absolutely.
the mic. I'm giving you the mic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you're so right. And I think, for a lot of times with women, we are so together in the out what the world can see, but
Right.
we are so crumbled and broken on the inside. And so I tend to get women. Surprisingly, I have a lot of college age young women that I've gotten, and men. Young people in the millennial and the zillennial generation, they gonna come to therapy.
Okay.
It's, I don't know if it's trendy or what it is, but they're gonna get them some help. They
Okay.
have no stigma about therapy at all, and they don't care what anybody have to say. If grandma, like, I don't know why you're in therapy anyway. I don't know why you're talking to someone. They don't care, and I like that about them. And so what I do find is that I get a lot of women at age 40, 50, and 60 who really don't know who they are. Their children are grown
Yeah.
or growing up, and they not really, the husband, raising the family is what kept the family together. But now here you are with this kid is gone, and it's just you and him, and you don't really know him, and he don't really know you. And you try to figure some stuff out. You feel so down in the dumps because you don't really understand who you are. And I get a lot of women at that stage between 40 and 60 with that same scenario, that they don't really understand who they are. They've accomplished some things, or not, or raised a good family or not, but they just don't know who they are. And so one thing I pride myself on, why I say I'm the solution therapist, because I believe in confronting things. So not an aggressive way, but in a way that you really can take a look at and peel that onion back. And so what I rely on, two things, is wisdom. In everything that I do, I have relied on wisdom, and it allows me to see things that people generally don't see, even clinicians that generally don't see that, because I've treated a lot of therapists also. Um, and the other thing is, I always say, if you cannot face it, then you are sure not going to be able to fix it, and you're not going to be able to heal from it. And a lot of people don't face a lot of things, and we just put a band-aid on it and keep going. And that's what kind of trips us up along the line. It's going to come out in some kind of way eventually. It trips us
Yep.
up.
Yep. I was just trying to think of a saying that my mother used to say, and I can't remember it. It was something to the effect of, "It's gonna come out in the wash eventually," something along those
Oh,
lines.
yeah. My dad says that. He says if it doesn't come out in the wash, it's going to come out in the rinse.
Right. It's yeah. There you go.
And I
It's
love
coming
hearing him
out.
say that. I love when I heard him say that. And he said that last year to me. We were talking about something, and I was like, I like that, Daddy, because you're right. It's gonna come out
Mhm.
in the wash, or it's gonna when a rinse cycle comes on it, it rinses that dirty water right off.
Yeah.
So it's gonna, if it don't come out in the wash, it's definitely gonna come out in the rinse. So it definitely comes
Mhm.
out in some kind of way in all of our lives. Whether we are in therapy or not. And what I really like is people who are proactive about their care. You don't have to have a crisis to have a therapist.
Right.
I always say that a good doctor, a good hairdresser, and a good therapist are three things that we need to have on our Rolodex. Or, I know people don't use Rolodexes anymore, but we need to have them in our contact list.
Right.
So when I need them, we go get our hair more than we go to we go get our hair done more than we go to the doctor, and we
Right.
definitely go to the doctor more than we come to therapy. But
Right.
when I need you, you're there.
Hmm.
So,
But just even care, in terms of going to the doctor. Okay,
mhm.
it's a couple of things. One, I mean, that was just the tip of it in terms of women going to the doctor, or just people going to the doctor in general. It's like
Agent.
they wait until it's a crisis. I go
Mhm.
to the doctor, and because like, let's say I have a pain in my back, right? And I just let it go. I just let it go. I just pop a motion, pop a leave or whatever, right? Just
Mhm.
keep on going until one day I can't get out the bed. Now I'm limping into the doctor. It's just like, well, how long you been having this pain? But I'm just saying, just kind of throwing it out there. That's what it made me think of that. I was surprised to find out a lot of people don't go and get regular physicals anymore. But that's a whole nother
Absolutely.
thing. So, and that's interesting too that you talked about the younger people. You said they gonna get them some therapy. They don't.
They will. I get so many calls from people under 30. It's just amazing to me that
Okay.
they're receptive to what you have to say to them.
Hmm.
Even though I'm a little bit older, I do have I have two therapists that work with me contractually that are 30, like under 35.
Okay.
Um, but they want someone older, and I'm okay with that because I definitely can relate. I don't care how old you are, I can relate to you. I don't see children anymore, but I used to see kids and families a whole lot.
Okay.
I don't anymore see anyone under 18 or 19 years old anymore. But I try to keep myself abreast, and my younger clients help me keep abreast of what's going on and the lingo and all of that, so that I can connect with people for sure. And my son's 24, my daughter is 33 years old, so they're both of those. I have two kids in a millennial and a zillennial generation, so
Right.
they help keep me abreast of what's going on. And then I have a granddaughter who's 15. So between the three of them, I understand what's going on.
Right. Right.
So
Right. You got a pretty good eye on everything that's happening out there.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, absolutely. So
So.
I just think that people are, not forthcoming. And you're very right. Even with mental health, people
Mhm.
wait until they're in crisis mode to seek help. And you don't have to be, you can be as like you would be proactive about, eating right and losing weight and doing those things. You can do the same thing with your mental health. Be proactive and making sure that you're together so that you don't get to the crisis point or you're not there alone.
Right.
And I realized during the pandemic that it was so many people who are going through anxiety because they were so afraid. We didn't know what was going to happen to us. We didn't know. if this was it for any of us, because they made it so scary during the pandemic, and a lot of people died during the pandemic. And so after they started to open things up, now I'm dealing with the grief of, I started dealing with the grief of, hey, I lost this person, I lost my job, I lost this, I lost that during the pandemic. So there were definitely consequences to us going through what we went through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want you to talk about that. So remember, let's go back to just talking about the pandemic and mental health. But before we go there, I want to just add again that in terms of dealing with women, you had mentioned before women between the ages of like 40 and 60, I think you said.
Yes, yes.
And I've been noticing the same thing, even in my day therapy job, as well as in my business. I've
Mhm.
noticed that a lot of times when I ask women things along the lines of like, well, what do you do for yourself? Or what do you do for fun? Or what are your hobbies? It's just like I get a blank stare, and it's kind of like, that's a good question. So I really think that it's important to kind of like take note of that, just in
It
terms of
is.
women losing themselves. I don't mean it, ladies, in a bad way. It's just, I think, something that tends to happen. You're so focused on your family, your children, your husband's needs, that you just kind of yourself and your own needs and your likes and dislikes and passions just have a tendency just to kind of almost like fade to
God.
black,
Mhm.
you know and so it's just, yeah, I just think it's important to not allow that to happen. You can still be an excellent mother, be an excellent wife, fulfill whatever, excellent daughter, fulfill whatever your goals are in the community and things of that nature. But it's not selfish to take care of yourself, and don't let it get to a point where you just don't know yourself anymore. you
and
know
that's and that's one thing that we're taught, that is selfish, to focus on you, or we feel so guilty, like the mom guilt is so real.
it is.
And everybody, when I talk to people, like, they just don't, because their kids come first, and your kids, they didn't ask to be here, they should come first. But I remember reading a story about a lady who now has made this a business, teaching women how to tap into self-care. I remember she said that she called her mother, and she called her mother when she was pregnant at the time, having her first child, and her mother was not excited. And so her mother had been married to her father for a number of years,
Mhm.
and her mother, I think that I don't, either she said her mother cried or she wasn't excited when she told her mother. She was, this lady was happy that her and her husband were having their first child, but her
Mhm.
mother made a point to her to say, make sure that I don't care what happens, that you take yourself on a date every week. And she was like, huh? What? Of all the things you can say while I'm getting ready to have this child. But what
Mhm.
her mother was saying, that she has given up so much of herself
Right.
and so much of her own life and her own goals and her own
Mhm.
purpose for the sake of her husband and her kids. So she
Right.
was telling her to make sure that she tends to herself, regardless of the roles that we all have. And we have the roles of mother, the role of wife, the role of partner, the role of, being in the workforce. We have all these roles,
Yeah.
but the role of self-care, the role of self, and the role of purpose, we don't have that. And some of us never get that.
Mhm.
And we wonder why we walk through life just really unfulfilled, because we don't understand that. When I ask people the question about, what are your strengths, so many people can't tell me.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I tell them that's okay if you don't know it now. Hopefully you'll learn that as we go through this process. But it's so many people that cannot tell me what their strengths are.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So many people. It's just it's yeah, a lot of people. And it's just, I don't know. And I watched my mother too. My mother didn't have any sort of an identity outside of us kids and the family.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, I just think it's so common, even to the point where it's even frowned upon. You know, because I know, I have one child. He'll be 13 shortly, and I know when I talk about different things to different people about me, it's kind of like, well, what, you know what I mean? Well, you're a mother, you don't need to be concerned
Right.
with that, and I'm just like, well, my mental health is important because if I don't have good mental health, what kind of a mother am I going to be? I mean,
Absolutely.
so everything within balance, you
That
know.
and that's the one thing that's very hard for us to do, is to have balance in a lot of things that we do, whether it be work or motherhood or being a partner. Balance is hard.
Mhm.
Change is hard. It change is something that we talk about often, but until we put the action words behind it, it
Mhm.
means nothing. It's just a dream that we have if we
Mhm.
don't put the action words behind the change. And I often talk about the scenario of the caged birds. So you have three birds in a cage, and if you open the door, one bird is going to stay in there because he's used to being caged up, being locked up. He's going to not even try to leave. He's going to stay in there. One bird is going to fly out immediately because he wants change. He wants to do something different. He wants to soar and see what the world has to offer. Most of us teeter in the middle. We got one foot out the door because we want something different, and one foot in the door because this is the familiarity that we have. Even if it's miserable, it's the familiar misery that we have. So
Right.
we stay like teetering outside that door, inside the door, because we're afraid, and uncertainty is a fearful place to be, for a lot of people, that uncertainty. So I think that is what trips us up a lot, being in the middle of wanting to change, but not having the tools to change.
Right. Wanting to change, but not having the tools to change.
Absolutely.
Like that.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned that it was a lady earlier that you, I guess, ran across. You said she actually teaches women how to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I think she from there created a business, and
Mm,
she has these online. That's how I don't know how I came across her
mm,
a few years ago, but she made a 7-figure business with trying to reach out to women
uh-huh,
to show them how to. She probably does a lot more at this point because I'm sure she's
uh-huh.
diversified herself, but at the time, like you talk about the budgetista. I'm not sure if you know who she is, Tiffany
Yes.
Lee.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
With her, she started out a person who, lost her job, her credit score went down, she was couch
Mm-hmm.
surfing, and she started out teaching women, learning herself how to budget to get
Mm-hmm.
back on track, and then teaching it to other women,
Mm-hmm.
first, for free in a nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
or a nonprofit, to now she has a 7-figure business
Mm-hmm.
that she does where she teaches people about money and their whole attitude about money and budgeting.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the things you want, but within reason.
Right.
You work toward the things you want. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of
Mm-hmm.
us, we can be sleeping on the couch, but we're driving $50,000 cars, but we're laying on somebody else's couch. That
Right.
doesn't make sense to me at all.
Right.
So
Yeah, I don't care how you package that one up. It's a hot mess.
it doesn't make sense at all. Yeah, you're driving good, but you're sleeping crazy and you're living
Right.
crazy. So,
So let's segue or end on this note. I mean, of course, I want you to, at the very end, tell everyone, how they can contact you. And also
absolutely.
too, then I want you to get into like if there's, like specialties that your office deals with and things of that nature. But I want you to talk a little bit now about COVID, because I know, or the pandemic. I know you talked a little, kind of touched on it a little bit earlier about how you have noticed, or basically what you see in your practice as a result of living in this pandemic.
Absolutely. I know, for me, in just 3 years, I have
Hmm.
serviced almost 500 people. My practice has serviced almost 500 people in 3 years, which is good for me as a business owner. But it says that people really are in need of help. And so, what the pandemic did for us, it really, one thing it did was really help people to understand that, hey, I'm not okay, and I do need help, and it's okay to get help. And grief and anxiety were safety nets for people to come into therapy for, because it doesn't say I'm really going crazy and then I've lost somebody. So, but when they get in therapy, they realize that they really have struggled with a lot of things, a lot of childhood things, or a lot of other things that have been hidden away. And so I think during the pandemic, it was a blessing and a curse to us. It was definitely a curse because so many people died, and we, people got sick and we lost so many people. But it was a blessing as far as therapy is concerned, because it made people really take a look at how they're doing things. For some people, they did not change at all once things died down. For others, they did change. A lot of businesses were created during the pandemic because people couldn't earn money the traditional way. Like they said, they had the great resignation at that time, and thankfully, I was able to be a part of that. But COVID really kind of like put a light on a lot of things with people with their mental health, not just their physical health, but their mental health. It really shined a light on that a lot of us are not okay. And so for therapists, I think the therapy we're overwhelmed as therapists, to the point where I hear people all the time where I call this therapist or I email this therapist and they never call me back, or they're not calling me back. So I think people are so overwhelmed with the capacity of people that need help. It takes no skin for me to help somebody do what I do, because we're all needed. People are always going to need therapy. They're always going to need a mental health professional, no matter what. Unfortunately, we're always going to be in need at some capacity. So, it takes no skin off my back to show somebody to do what I do, because somebody showed me how to do what they do. So I really think the pandemic shined a lot of light on the fact that people are not okay. And I think that we're, in general, because of things that are going on in the world, we're inundated by trauma every day. We respond differently, because if it doesn't directly affect me, then I may not be as responsive as you might be if you were, had a loved one that you lost, or a loved one in a gun, lost a gun. I'm not affected in that regard daily or directly, but I am affected daily. I remember sitting there watching TV, and they were having I think the 8th or 9th child in Detroit died at the hands of a drive-by shooting. And one day I just broke out crying, because, no, that wasn't my child. I didn't know who that kid was. But good Lord, who could not be affected after hearing back to back to back 8 or 9 kids innocent children being shot in a drive-by shooting. So that kind of stuff, we're inundated daily by trauma, but we're not affected directly by trauma.
Right. I hadn't thought of it like that. You're right. You're right. Daily by trauma. Even if, like you said, just simply turning on the news. Just turning on the news,
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. I hadn't really looked at it like that.
Yeah.
But all of us, living in today's society, there's so much going on that
100%. Yeah. and we're all really, we're created to be relational beings, but it's so much selfishness and individuality, going on around us. But we're created to be relational. So what happens to you, I should be affected by that. Not so much that directly, like it's like what I said. What happens to you doesn't necessarily directly affect me, but I should show some concern as a human being, because you are affected by what you are affected by.
Right. Now, this is an off the cuff question. How do you think social media has impacted mental health?
In a good way and a bad way. I think in a good way, because there's so many advertisements, commercials, and celebrities that are really talking about mental health, and that's been their platform. Social media has been their platform. You see all these commercials. I see a lot of therapists on social media now that I had not ever seen before. So in a good way, in one way, it's been good. In another way, it could be, like I said, a blessing and a curse, because we're inundated so rapidly by bad news and trauma. And then we get news that we get snippets of stuff, but not the whole picture. But we take the little snippet and run with it, instead of trying to really research what is really going on. And so in that regard, it has done a disservice to us in a lot of ways. It causes a lot of anxiety. We compare ourselves to people who we think have made it, and they really have not made it. But on social media, they look like they have it all together. I remember reading a story on social media. I can't remember this lady's name, but I remember a lady said she reached out to this lady to be a part of her conference. And just 2 hours ago, she saw this lady out like taking pictures of doing a photo shoot with her outfit of the day on with red bottoms and her expensive purse. But when she reached out to this lady directly, she told her that, sis, I'm really literally sleeping on my friend's couch right now. I don't know where I'll be in two weeks or 2 months.
Mm,
And but she painted the picture as if she had it all together. But
mm,
I'm glad she was honest with her. But that made me really think about that social media presents a picture that really is not always there, and we compare ourselves to that, and it causes anxiety for a lot of us. Like we don't think we're beautiful enough. We don't think we have the breasts that they have or the behind that they have, or we don't think that we've come so far in our career like they have. But they really have not made it. They just presented you that front. And so in that regard, social media has been a curse for us. But in other regards, it's been a platform of really spreading this good news
mhm,
about mental health and mental health awareness, as well as even our medical attention, medical health and things that
mhm,
we were not aware of before. It
mhm.
really has created a platform for people to tell their stories and to talk about what they were not able to talk about before.
Right. I think so. I agree with you. There's good and bad.
Hmm.
I've had clients talk to me about, when they scroll through different people's timelines, they start to feel, very inadequate, that that they haven't come far enough, and they're just constantly on this kind of comparison wheel.
Hmm.
So I agree with you. I can see there's some positive things, like you said, more access, maybe more knowledge about it, more people being able to tell their story. Like, I guess, what's her name? Is it Jennifer Lewis? Is that it? Is that her name? Jennifer Lewis?
The actress,
The actress, yes.
yes, one, yeah, the one who has bipolar disorder.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So just kind of like thinking about her speaking out, you know has really, things on those are some of the positives.
And
People
she's
get
been telling her story a long time, but it's just now being heard. But she's
okay,
been telling her story a very long time.
okay.
But it, like I said, it was not okay to talk about those things back when she started talking about it. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
now it's okay, and people see that even though
Right.
she has a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, she's very functionable,
Mm-hmm.
very lively, makes a lot of money.
Hmm.
Doing what she needs to do, even though she's eccentric at sometimes, but
Right.
that's worked well for her. So,
Right.
I'm glad she now has this platform that people are listening and they're being aware,
Right.
um, and like they have not before.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So it's been a blessing and a curse to us.
Blessing and a curse. So, Griselda, talk to us now about a little bit more specifics about you and your company. So, tell us exactly, give us the name again, where you're located, any particular specialties. Do you do virtual as well as, in person? Just tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, my practice is called Life Changing Therapeutic Services, and I have this arm that I haven't developed fully called In Touch Moments or In Touch Destiny. That's my coaching arm, my awareness arm. Because I plan to hopefully do a podcast. That's something I've been putting off also for a couple years, but the In Touch Moments really gives us the creativity to have a conversation about mental health and spirituality and other things about that nature. One of the things that I specialize in my practice is, first of all, I treat anybody, every situation.
Mhm.
But one of the things I really have specialized in is marriage and couples therapy. I do get a lot of, some of my colleagues, they won't even see couples or marriage counseling because it's, in their mind, it's for one thing, it's hard to bill for that, and for two, it's difficult because it's so much drama related around that. But for me, I've only had a couple bad situations, but for the most part, I always tell this joke too. When I get a man who calls me for couple therapy or marriage counseling, it's because his woman is on her way out the door, and she's already told him for a year or 2 years that they need counseling, and he's told her, Is nothing wrong with me, something wrong with you. We don't need counseling. But now she's getting ready to walk out the door. And so now I get and that it has never failed. But one time, one guy called me for preventative, him and his wife to get on, preventative stuff. But every time that a man has called me is because his wife was like, this is her last straw. But so that was one of my specialties. I am completely a virtual practice, so I do not see people in person. And I don't foresee that in the future, but who knows? I may do a hybrid kind of method of in-person therapy, because some people are seeking that, the in-person contact, but there aren't a lot of therapists available doing in-person therapy. And so, a lot of people are in that regard behind because they don't have the capacity or the availability in their area. One thing I think virtual therapy does for us, it allows us to treat and see people anywhere in the world, this country and outside this country. So that's the great thing about teletherapy. But that's, one of my specialties. Like I said, I deal with men are now coming to me more and more and more frequently for therapy. I've always worked with women and they're, dealing with brokenness and healing and trauma, childhood trauma, sexual abuse. And so I have a lot of background. I worked with domestic violence victims. I work with sexually abused children and women. I've worked in a lot of capacities in my career that affords me the wealth of knowledge to treat people. And I meet people where they are and try to confront the things that they need to confront. And that's what I do. And so I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. And I thank God for what he's afforded me. I always say that I have a double portion because I am an ordained evangelist. I can marry the two passions that I have spiritually. I'm listed as a Christian counselor, but a person doesn't have to be a Christian to come to me, or they don't have to talk about Christianity to come to me. But somehow we tend to throw it in, when you are an evangelist, you tend to throw it in when it's appropriate. So I always say that the Lord has given me a double portion. I'm able to marry the best of both of my worlds together to help people. Okay. So yes, absolutely.
So we have one more minute. So tell us where they can find you. They want to reach out to you, follow you, connect with you.
I'm on LinkedIn as Gricelda Ramsey, LMSW. I think I'm on Facebook. I have a business page, Life Changing Therapeutic Services. My name is there, Gricelda Ramsey. Also, I'm on Instagram as Life Changing Therapeutic Services, or Life Changing Therapeutics.gr. You'll find me on there. I also am listed on TikTok, even as a solution therapist on TikTok, solutions therapist on TikTok. So I have many platforms, and I have a YouTube channel that I haven't developed yet either. I guess I'll do more of that once I start showing my presence on social media more. I'll download more things. So, and my email address is lifechangingtherapeutic@gmail.com. You can also find me on Psychology Today. You can find me on Open Path. And you can also find me on Monarch or Simple Practice, which is a platform also that I use for my practice. So there's a lot of ways that people can reach out to me.
You said, what was it? You said Monarch?
Yes, Monarch is a directory that's connected to Simple Practice.
Oh,
so
okay.
If somebody wants to request an appointment or anything, they go through Monarch and request an appointment through me, and it'll show me on Simple Practice, hey, this person has requested an appointment. And I'm also able to, like, people have, I have my Instagram and my Facebook page set up where they can receive an appointment inquiry also.
Oh, okay.
So they can talk to me directly. I'll call people directly once I get that inquiry, because I like to talk to people directly. But I'll get the inquiry through those entities or those social media platforms.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. We are ending for today. Thank you, Gricelda, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a good time.
Yeah, I had a wonderful time having you, and you really, this talk was very informative. I got a lot out of it. I'm sure our listeners will, and hopefully you will also get some new potential clients as well, or possible collaborations. So
Absolutely.
thank you again.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
and anytime you want to have me back, just let me know. I really had a good time being on your show. And thank you so much for that chance encounter that we had at the skating rink, running into each other. So, you just never know how God connects people together and for what reason. But I just thank God for just meeting you and connecting with you and collaborating with you.
Same here. Same here. I feel the same way. So we are finished with today's episode of A Queen's Roundtable Show and Podcast. If you caught us in the middle, go ahead and make sure you listen to the entire episode. And make sure you join us next week at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Absolutely.
All right. So until then, everyone, I'm your host, Dr. Jacqueline Kabah Harrison, and I look forward to meeting with you again next week, same time. All right. And make sure you subscribe to A Queen's Roundtable channel. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.